Welcome to this edition of At the Mic. I'm your host, Keith Malinak. Austin Petersen is a former model, has appeared on late night TV, and he's run for President of the United States as well. Our conversation is next. First, allow me to talk about the incredible company based just outside of Des Moines, Iowa. They're American Pride Roasters Coffee. APR Coffee is so unique on the American small business landscape, battling against the big boys as they face insanely hiked costs during this period of intense inflation and supply chain woes. Some of the nightmares that Dave Matthews from APR Coffee has told me about are just unreal. But they continue to deliver superior coffee to their highly valued customers, like yourself. I hope you'll give APR Coffee a shot if you haven't yet, and even if it's just one try you give them a shot. They're defying the odds during very trying times for small businesses. They love America, and they love their craft of bringing you the highest quality coffees available while sharing your love for this country. Please give aprcoffee.com a try today or place another order with them if you've already done business in the past. They would love to see you return. And be sure to use promo code ATM for 10% off at checkout. That's offer code ATM at aprcoffee.com.
You're listening to At the Mic with Keith, an independent podcast production.
Austin Petersen has already lived quite a life and experienced so much. Recently, he and I sat down to discuss his radio show, his karate prowess, and of course, that run for President of the United States, and if he's gonna ever possibly run for office again someday. We talk about all of that and so much more. Let's get things started with this week's guest on At the Mic. It's Austin Petersen. Man, thank you so much, because this was insanely zero notice. I want to tell you how I discovered that you were actually going to be in town. So someone sent me a message on Twitter that said, hey, while Austin is in town for Elijah, you should have him on At the Mic. And I said, wait, what? And so I went through your feed, and I was like, oh, cool, I see the tweet here. Because you and I have actually tried to coordinate something a while back, and I thought, hey, here's a chance. I'm going to ask him. So thanks for carving out time with zero notice whatsoever. I appreciate it, man.
Yeah, absolutely. I was on my honeymoon a couple weeks ago, and Elijah sent me the DM on Twitter. I was on the beach. He's like, hey, can you come to Dallas, Texas? I'm like, yes, but let's maybe discuss next week. Yeah, but
that's funny.
It was a good time, though. I had a good time, and got back from Florida, and now I'm in Dallas.
Because you recently got married.
Yep.
Tell us how you met Stephanie.
Okay, so this is a great story, the old-fashioned libertarian love story. So when I ran for Senate in 2018, she had seen me when I ran for president, and I spoke at Hillsdale after that, and she came and saw me speak, and we became friends. She was kind of like the volunteer who was the top volunteer for my Senate campaign. Came to Missouri a bunch. She's from Michigan. And we were really good friends. And then, after the campaign was over, I decided to have a meetup with all my Liberty friends in Missouri. So we went on this camping / canoeing trip. And at one point on the canoe trip, we went in a cave where we were just kind of the group of people all just kind of walking through the cave. And then at one point, I felt this hand reach around and grab my waist, and it was just...
was it completely dark? Did you have any
dark,
idea?
Yeah. Well, it wasn't that scary, but I mean, I felt this electricity in my chest when that happened, and I was like, I had never kind of looked at her like that before. Oh. And so after that, we started to talk more, and I think we were friends for like 2-3 years, and then we started dating. And my boss kind of asked me last fall, what was it that made you decide that she was the one? And I thought about it for a moment. My grandmother had this recipe that she used to make of this Danish. It's a Danish recipe. I'm Danish. And of noodles for Thanksgiving every year. My grandma passed away a few years ago, and I just remember telling her how much I really loved my grandmother's recipe. She went and found out what that recipe was, without me even knowing, and made it for me and my whole family. And I was like, at that moment, I was like, oh, she is the one. She is the one.
Cool,
and
man.
so we got married on the family farm, at a beautiful farm wedding, and she looked amazing, and our families, came together and met for the first time. And my mother passed away when I was really young. Some people might remember that when I talked to Glenn about that, about my faith and things like
old,
that.
I believe.
Yeah. And Stephanie really fills that void in my life of like having someone who is that feminine presence, who is nurturing and loving and kind and tender. And having our families come together in that moment was like a moment where it just kind of, you really have this hope, this swelling feeling of hope for your future, where when you don't have a family, when you don't have kids, when you don't have that, you like the future is kind of uncertain. The future, what is it going to be? But like, I really see, even though I'm, not a religious person, how important the institution of marriage is in terms of creating stability and having, healthy psychology, and having healthy relationships. And so I'm happier now than I've ever been. And I've had a great life, but it's better now than it's ever been.
That's cool, man. Yeah. And you talk about that life. We've got a lot of ground to cover with that life, because I just love the fact you were born and raised on a farm in Peculiar, Missouri.
Yeah.
Right. And that same farm you ended up getting married on then?
Yeah.
Cool.
The family farm. Yeah.
That's great. How was life growing up on a farm, man?
You can't just go to your friend's house, right? When you live in the suburbs, you can get on your skateboard or your bike and you can go visit your friends. You can't do that, right? So you kind of have to have an imagination. And, there's danger on the farm, right? You're walking in the woods, and when you're a little kid, everything seems so much bigger and scarier, right? So I think, there's a reason why people who grow up in cities have different mindsets than people who grow up in rural areas. And there's a reason why culturally we have these differences, I think, as a country, because you just become naturally more independent. You have to think for yourself. You're not being influenced as much by people. We couldn't get cable where we were. I couldn't watch Nickelodeon. So when I went to school, I had no idea what the Rugrats were. I couldn't, and in some ways it alienated me from my peers, but in other ways, it made you more sort of self-reliant, I guess.
Yeah. See, I grew up in the suburbs, and I didn't have the benefit of Nickelodeon either.
Really?
So, two different reasons, I guess. But
poor kid.
Yeah, right. See, I absolutely love the rural settings in this country. I was born and raised in Atlanta, Georgia, but I went to the University of Nebraska, and I've spent a lot of time. I'm very familiar with the state of Nebraska, and so I know what you mean about being so far away from your neighbors and your friends. But it's so, especially today, the benefits of being outside of the cities. It's so rewarding. It really is. It's practically a vacation just to get out of the city limits. And I wonder, do you currently live in a rural setting then? And so we've
got 5.5 acres.
Okay, yeah.
Compared to a lot of people, that's a lot, right? And we live in the county, so we don't have the same kind of restrictions you'd have if we lived in Jefferson City. So I can shoot on my property, for example, and I can shoot fireworks off on my property, for example. So there's aspects of our life that's rural, but we're not too far away from the city.
But your kids will get the benefit of more of a setting like you're used to growing up.
Yeah.
Than say
they'll get a little bit of both, which I kind of like, cool. Right? And we can get internet, so we are connected if we need to see TikTok for whatever reason, but not that we'd want to. But yeah, I think that it's healthy. When you're a kid, the grass is always greener. You're gonna wish that you could run around with your friends in the suburbs and things like that. But I don't know that necessarily produces the best outcome. I feel like I lived in New York for a number of years. I lived in DC for a number of years, 11 years, and that was enough. That was enough. I got that experience, right? It's kind of like that song that we got from the class of 99, Wear Sunscreen, where he's like, live in New York, but leave before it makes you hard. Live in Southern California, but leave before it makes you soft, right? Like starting out in a rural setting, I think is healthy for kids. They're going to want to go stretch their legs and live in the cities. But you know what? My brother, he's lived in Boston for about as long, and now he wants to come home. He wants to come home. He works in the same kind of industry as I do, and he wants to come back. He wants to spend time with family because it's just, I think, psychologically healthier.
Yeah. So what was your earliest memory growing up as a kid? Any idea what that was?
Probably my earliest memory would have been preschool. I just remember I pooped my pants.
Awesome.
Yes, I was. So before Big Bird became a shill for the vaccine companies, they had like the Sesame Street characters that come to preschool, and I was so afraid that I was going to miss them that I didn't want to go to the bathroom.
No.
So it became a self-fulfilling prophecy because I waited to go to the bathroom because I didn't want to miss them, but then I pooped my pants and then they sent me home, so I ended up...
Oh, no!
That's
tragic.
Yeah, it was tragic.
So does that serve as your most embarrassing moment in life as well?
Oh,
or
dude, I've ran for president as a libertarian.
Oh, we're going to get to this. We're going to get to this.
And then changed parties and ran as a Republican and got crushed. So, no, I've been embarrassed publicly.
Okay.
Gary Johnson threw my gun away in the garbage.
Whoa.
Wait, you don't know this? Oh, man.
Hold on.
Oh, that doesn't... Pooping my pants as a preschooler does not weigh anywhere near the most embarrassing things.
I don't know that I know this.
Oh, it's a long story, but I'll keep it brief. So essentially, I had a replica of George Washington's flintlock pistol.
Okay.
And I'd had it for years. It was like, you get them at Mount Vernon, they sell them for like $100. It's like non-working, but a nice replica. And it's just something that I sat on my mantle as a conversation piece. I thought to myself, well, when I'm running for president, the convention is on President's Day. And I said, okay, I'm going to bring this with me. And if I don't win the nomination, then I will gift it to either John McAfee or Gary Johnson as a token of respect. That's kind of a thing with guys, like if you give a guy a gun, it's like a gesture of respect.
Oh, I do not know this story.
Oh, it was a deal. So,
can we just stop for just a moment here before you get into this story?
Yeah.
You ran for president, which kudos to you. I mean that sincerely. And what a missed opportunity for the Libertarian Party when they bypassed you. I could not believe, and I watched that day. That's why as you tell this story, and I'm sorry to interrupt it.
No, all right.
But I followed that convention and those results that day, and so I was not aware of this story. But oh my gosh, please tell me. It felt like, from my perspective, 1,000 miles away, as a total screw job.
Well,
was it not that from your perspective? But anyway, I didn't want to take up.
There are exciting reasons that are interesting to discuss about why that happened, and then there's some of the boring reasons, which is that he had been the candidate before, and typically they offer it as a gesture of a courtesy that if the candidate who was before wants to run again, just like in the Republican or the Democratic Party. Sure. So that's part of it, but there were other malign reasons that we could get into later. But I'll just say this, that, I brought that gun because knowing that my chances were slim, I wanted to be humble and offer as a gesture of respect. Well, the Gary Johnson campaign demanded that I endorse Bill Weld, the vice presidential candidate who had come in, who had said all kinds of dumb stuff about guns, like the AR-15 is a weapon of war and all this stuff. So I was like, listen, I promised I would support Gary if you won, but it doesn't mean I don't have to endorse his vice presidential candidate.
Right.
So when I refused to do so, and I said, hey, you should pick this other person to be the VP instead of Bill Weld, Gary Johnson tossed the gun in the garbage. And I didn't find out until later when my supporters came and told me the story. And then Gary Johnson confirmed it because Fox News contacted him about that. And he said, yeah, we did. It was weird, too, because they tried to buy it back from me because the media was like, hey, did you do this? Did you do this? And they kept sending these emissaries like, oh, $500? Will you give it to us for $1,500? And I'm like, no, I'm going to keep it now. It's mine now. And they're like, just, they basically were like, blank check. What do you want for it? Weird. And at that point, I was like, well, now it's priceless. So I'm definitely keeping this gun.
What are they going to do with it?
Use it as to say, oh, no, we didn't throw away the gun.
Oh, okay. Right. Yeah, like, here it is.
Yeah,
We've had it the whole time.
Yeah.
Okay.
So anyways, but I got my gun back. And it's funny because now it's the most, I own a lot of guns, but that is now the most expensive gun in my.
Wait, what is it valued at?
Well, I mean, name my price, right? So,
right, yeah.
And they offered a blank check, but to me, it has more value to me from like a sentimental perspective.
Right.
Like, if I ever do hold office, right? Let's say I win dog catcher one day, then I'll put it on my desk for the dog catcher in a little glass case. The garbage gun.
Garbage gun. George Washington's garbage gun.
Yes.
We will get back to some discussions of your campaigns and in some of the offices that you have sought. But I want to go back to your early days in Missouri. You ended up going to Missouri State University.
Yeah.
And I found what you majored in to be quite interesting, considering that, because currently you're a talk host in Jefferson City, Missouri on the radio there.
KWOS News Radio.
Nice. Okay. So in addition to your political talk show, you have run for office. So how did you get from fine arts into politics? And tell us about being a fine arts major. What were you planning on doing?
It's funny you said that because like when I was working in Washington, D.C. With political stuff, that's what people would say, right? I would go to like cocktail parties and things, and they'd be like, mostly it's political science majors and lawyers in D.C.
Right.
And so when people found out that you majored in musical theater, it's very like, what are you doing here? Oh my God. Right?
So that was the specific, was musical theater.
It was musical theater.
Okay.
Right. And so... Well, but here's the thing. You know what was funny was that this would have been 2008 when I first started getting into politics because of Ron Paul.
Right.
But at the time, there weren't many conservative or libertarians who were into politics and who were creative. And I still think we kind of suffer from a dearth of creative types. You know, we're in a creative area, so you're surrounded by them here. Yeah. But in terms of overall, like if you look at the Republican National Convention versus the Democratic Convention, we've got Clint Eastwood and Arnold Schwarzenegger. You know, however you feel about him, he's Republican. And they've got all of Hollywood, right? They've got all of television. They've got all of these, you know, artists and actors, So it was actually a benefit to me, you know, having been a volunteer, a video producer and a creative type at the time. You know, now we do have a lot more. There's a lot more competition. So I was a little more rare then than I am now. It doesn't sound, you know, at the time in 2008, when I was telling people, I'm producing videos for Ron Paul, and they're like, oh, does that help? I'm like, yeah, it's raising millions of dollars, right? Like that was a big deal to have conservative and libertarian producers of creative content. And now it's like, in terms of social media and things like that, if the left wasn't fighting us so hard on social media, like I just got banned from Facebook like a couple hours ago, like for posting a very, very innocuous, not even a meme, just a very innocuous opinion. If it wasn't for them fighting us as hard as they're fighting us, I think we would control most of social media because, as you know, the left can't meme. And
yeah, I know.
They might be creative, but they cannot mix. The left cannot mix politics with art. The last time...
No sense of humor.
Yeah, the last time that the left, or that Hollywood successfully created propaganda was Casablanca. That was the last time that Hollywood made a great piece of art that was a political propaganda piece.
You bring up Casablanca. I swear, Austin, there's been no fewer than 24 times in my life that I've thought, I gotta watch that movie.
Oh no. Yeah, it's a classic. But it was a war propaganda piece.
Okay.
It was set up, created specifically to send the message that the Allies were morally superior, and it did its job very well. Mm-hmm. But the left hasn't done anything like that since. There hasn't been a propaganda piece that the left has done success. Every time you see a leftist meme, it's like a wall of text. Right? Just some unfunny, completely factually inaccurate. But that's why they have to silence us. That's why they have to shut us down, because it's too effective. What was Beto O'Rourke's quote? He said, powerful conservative memes. We have to fight back against powerful conservative memes. They are powerful. Our message is extremely powerful. What is it? The liberals were complaining about Ben Shapiro is like #1 shared on Facebook. I'm surprised they allow him to operate.
Yeah.
But he's too powerful. You know, they come after guys like you and me and try and shut us. I don't know if you've got the blue check mark. You got the blue check mark?
I've run into trouble one time on Twitter. That's the only place I am. And I literally, all I did was link to a montage of raw C-SPAN footage of Joe Biden touching little kids. And that's
his sniffing?
There's no commentary. Yeah. There's nothing. It's literally just raw C-SPAN footage. And I was told that was inappropriate for the community, which I think that's de facto admitting that what Biden was doing was inappropriate. Is it not? No commentary from me. No commentary in the link.
You know that the fact is it's not about what Biden was doing. It was the fact that you painted him in a light that was anything other than flattering.
And the year was 2020, so campaign season.
Oh, yeah. Remember the whole freaking Hunter Biden story from the New York Post that they completely shut down?
Oh, yeah.
And then they had to admit that it was later that it was real?
Right. So how did you get from going into musical theater then into politics? Was it Ron Paul that got you involved? Yeah,
it was Ron Paul. I mean, in 2007... I was living in New York City, and I saw Ron Paul's. He had that famous moment with Rudy Giuliani, where he said that where Rudy Giuliani was outraged by Ron Paul's statement about the reasons why Osama bin Laden attacked us, and I had not heard a Republican expressing a view of our foreign policy like Ron that day. Which and the fact that Giuliani was so outraged about, I'd never heard of this guy, this 72-year-old kind of cranky sounding OBGYN from Texas. I was like, well, let me learn more about this guy. And so I started producing, and you can go back and view some of them on YouTube. They're terrible, like, filmed with a potato, videos for Ron Paul, but they would just get hundreds of thousands of views. And then the Tea Party started, right? And then we started making Tea Party videos. And at that point in time, if you were a libertarian making Tea Party videos on YouTube, you were the biggest deal in the world. And one thing led to another. What happened was that I went and worked for the Libertarian National Committee in D.C., which is the sort of professional operation that runs the Libertarian Party's business in D.C. Worked for them for a year, did some think tank stuff for another year, but Judge Andrew Napolitano, you might know, had seen my work, and he was doing a podcast, and so I gathered together all the forces and marshaled our forces and said, let's try and get Judge Napolitano his own show on Fox. And that was successful. The judge got his own show, and he hired me to go work for Fox.
The producer, right?
I became a producer, and that was the moment that really kickstarted my career, because at that point I was a guerrilla street producer.
Right. Okay.
And then when I'm working at Fox, it's a different story. You get a lot, that gold star on your resume.
Yeah.
And for 2 years of freedom fighting at Fox with the judge, we had Ron Paul's 2012 campaign that we went through, and even more millions of young people got involved with that campaign until we got to around 2015, where I ran for president. After Rand Paul started to look like he wasn't going to be viable, but it didn't used to be that we looked at art as something separate from politics. It didn't used to be that we looked at these industries, or at least these kinds of thoughts, as separate. Right now, we really like to separate things like sports and art from our politics and our public sphere.
Yeah.
But it used to be in ancient Greece that you were an athlete who competed in the games, and you also were an actor who performed in the theater, and you wrote plays, that were about politics. And you wrote the Women of Lysistrata, right? You made political messages with your plays, and so nowadays in our modern culture, we kind of say, oh well, art is not the same as politics, but I kind of see them as the same thing, right? Philosophy can be expressed in art, just because the left doesn't do it very well, and just because conservatives, I think even more than the left, the conservatives do see art and politics as separate items. I don't think that that's the case. And I think the more that we sort of see ourselves as take a holistic approach to these different thought patterns, the more of a whole person you really are. So I don't see them as kind of separate things. But isn't it funny, the way you ask that question is to say, those two things don't seem to go together. But I kind of see that they do.
No, and it's an interesting discussion. Absolutely. A recent guest here on the podcast, Ellen Wheeler, she came from an art background, if you will, in that she was an actress involved with soap operas. And she told the story in our conversation about how she ended up working for Freedom Works. And she talks about how, and it's a previous episode at themikeshow.com if you want to go check it out. But she talked about this encounter, or this experience she had with her inbox. She gets an email during the campaign 2012, Obama, and one from Romney. And the Romney one was like, come to this entrepreneurial ship, blah, 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 right? And the Obama was a video of a kid who had lost his dad. This is why you've got to get Obamacare, blah, 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 right? And it really touched the heartstrings. in this video as opposed to this stuffy email, come to our entrepreneurial discussion, you know? And so absolutely, you're hitting a home run with that whole connection with art and politics, which I think is absolutely something that is so, or at least has been, outside of the comfort zone of Republicans and conservatives, whereas social media now has provided that canvas for the memes, for the pithy, quick comments that actually are biting, yet they make a point and they get right to and that's why it has to be shut down.
Yeah, well, we're talking about masculinity a lot lately. Masculinity is a big question. I don't know if you've been seeing Senator Josh Hawley from Missouri. He's been out talking about liberals' attack on masculinity. In a way, you know, we have this conversation about toxic masculinity. In a way, we as men, we do sort of self-segregate in a way, right? We do see certain pursuits as masculine and certain pursuits not as masculine. And we, you know, because I remember specifically being in high school, you know, not playing sports and being more attracted to doing Shakespeare and being in plays and art and theater. And, you know, being told that, you know, this is what you want to do. These are the masculine pursuits. And these are not masculine pursuits, right? That you shouldn't pursue these kind of pursuits if you want to be considered a real man. And I was just chafed at that because some of the greatest men that I admired were men who were in the arts. Clint Eastwood, right? Men that I looked up to, John Wayne, right? These, you know, very traditional forms of masculinity that they were able to express. But then, you know, at the time, it really even got me thinking about what is it that we define, how do we define masculinity? And I think I agree with Josh Hawley that masculinity is under attack, but that I feel like we're ill-equipped to have a discussion about what needs to change in terms of modern masculinity in order us to, again, become more holistic men. Like if, let's say, for example, you had a spouse, as a man, like my father, after my mother died, he wasn't equipped to offer the kind of emotional support that, you know, my little sister, who was, you know, adopted, she was 5 years old. He wasn't equipped by his own parents and by society at the time to sort of deal with that emotional need, the emotional needs that were required to raise a young girl. And, you know, I was like 14 at the time too. So like I could have used a little bit of emotional support at that time. And what do? Do you go to therapy, right? I mean, that's kind of like what we do. But I mean, I hate to say this because my wife is a therapist. Sorry, Steffi. But I mean, maybe you shouldn't need therapy, right? Maybe if we had healthier family lives and maybe if we had a healthier view of masculinity and took a more holistic approach to what it means to be a man, that might actually create a stronger, healthier sense of masculinity. So then what Josh Hawley is complaining about, men retreating into porn or video games or what have you, then you wouldn't need to feel that desire to detach from society, because as a man who's holistic, you're confident in your sexuality, you're confident in your masculinity. No leftist can attack your masculinity. You don't need to feel, you don't need to do these other things to replace what it means to be a man, right? You can, you know, engage in healthy activities, and it does, you know, they could be considered masculine activities even if society at this point in time doesn't see them as such. Being in a play, writing a play, right? Like learning how to dance. You know, a lot of men's problem with being able to get women is because they can't dance. If men knew how to dance, and I'm a good dancer.
Okay.
But when I try and teach my guy friends to dance, it is like taking a fish out of water, right? But I mean, like,
see, I'm not.
Gene Kelly, right?
I got married so young, and you know,
you didn't have to learn.
21, I didn't have to. I didn't have to learn, but I see your point. Absolutely. You were saying Gene Kelly. Yeah, absolutely. Great point.
Danny Kaye, right? Tap dancing Danny Kaye. I mean, like, are you going to tell me that like Danny Kaye or that Gene Kelly, or who was the guy that played the gangsters in the mafia movies back day? But he's George M. Cohan. Okay. You know, you're a grand old flag. You know, you're going to tell me that those guys weren't masculine guys? Of course they were.
I love it.
But I mean, but here's the thing. When I'm saying this, I know that some men are out there listening are cringing because they're thinking to themselves, oh, this isn't me. I'm not going to learn how to dance. Learn how to dance and stuff like that. But I mean, like, that's a beautiful sign of masculinity, right? Like men learning how to dance, that was not always considered to be something that was unmasculine.
Yeah.
So I guess, one of the things that we're going to have to do is we're going to have to have some self-reflection as men and not compartmentalize ourselves so much in our own minds. But we self-police, right? We police each other. We police each other and we say, you got to behave like this. If you want to be a man, you got to behave like this. Being a man is that very, very small it compartmentalizes it. And I think it kind of like robs us in a sense of, again, having that holistic experience and being able to express ourselves fully creatively as men. And in some ways, because I think masculinity is much more represented on the right side politically, it's, if we can't holistically express ourselves creatively, then how can we ever make art that represents, how can we make architecture? Where are the beautiful buildings that are being created by artists that have a right-wing bent? Like when you look at some of the old art, the architecture of Europe, where is that in the United States today? Right? Anyways, go on and on.
So where does your modeling career fit into your timeline? Was that a good segue? You like that one?
So yeah,
and what did you model? I literally have no idea other than I saw a blurb somewhere that said.
All right, so we're not videoing this, right?
No,
so they can't see me. Okay, that's good.
I haven't enlightened the audience.
Right, so
and he's sitting here nude,
so you model
folks.
clothes, right? I model clothes, but I mean, So I did a Microsoft campaign once where I was you're selling computers, but I was like a computer salesman and. I did some underwear modeling,
right?
Really? But yeah, I used to look different than I do now. They can't see me, but I'm 40 now. So,
okay.
But I mean, I was into martial arts a lot, so I did, martial arts uniforms.
Right? Exercise?
Yeah, I still do, but it doesn't matter anymore because nobody cares when you're 40. So yeah, I did some of that, and. When you're trying to make it in this industry, you'll do anything. When you're 20 years old, you're going to do whatever you can do to So yeah, there's some stuff, I was surprised, honestly, that when I ran for president, that some of the media that I did not come out, or even for Senate, especially as a Republican. I'm honestly kind of shocked because, they came after me for some comments that I had made in a couple of interviews that were scandalous. But there were some photographs that I was like, I'm kind of glad that they didn't go dig for that stuff.
Time out a second. Are you suggesting that right now these photos are out there and available and still haven't been revealed?
Yeah.
Well, because the people will hear this and they will go and find them.
No, they won't because they don't. Because nobody cares. Because when you're not running for office, nobody gives a crap. But if I run for something again, maybe. But,
right.
Yeah.
Well, I will promise you this: those images will not be discovered by me because there's no way I'm typing into my search bar Austin Petersen underwear pics.
Nudes. Yeah. You will. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So now, how did you end up on a Conan OBrien skit?
Oh, that was pretty pretty sheer luck. I like to, people are always like, oh, you're on Conan OBrien. And I like to be like, oh, yeah, whatever, no big deal. But I was working at FAO Schwartz, the toy store, and they filmed a special there. And I was the top salesman for the skateboards at the time. And Conan wanted to learn how to ride the skateboards. Okay. So they filmed a segment with me teaching Conan OBrien how to skateboard. So
what year was this?
This would have been 2005 or 6 or so, 2005 or 6 in New York. And so it's just a brief segment of me teaching Conan OBrien how to do a skateboard.
Well, I got to look for that.
Yeah, that's on YouTube. That is on YouTube, and you can find it.
All right, very cool.
Those were the modeling days.
Those were the modeling days. Gotcha. Now, we mentioned earlier you host a morning talk show.
Yeah, KWOS. So it's a morning talk show in Jefferson City. It's the political talk show of the city. And I've been doing that now for 2.5 years. Jefferson City itself is a small town, but it's the state capital. So its kind of reputation is bigger than its population, right? So it's a very rural community, even though it's the capital city. And God, I just, when I first got there, it was so funny because I had never worked in radio. And apparently when you take over a radio show and the guy before you is the good old boy who leaves town after, people don't like that.
No.
And they do not like it when these young punks come in and then take over the show. And I got so much hate mail. And I was so nervous because I thought they're going to fire me because the amount outpouring of hatred. We got letters. People wrote letters, like hand wrote letters.
Yeah.
Please get Austin Petersen off of the show, blah, blah, blah.
Now, what did the guy that you replaced, did he retire? Did he?
Yeah. He was,
okay.
He had been around for a long time. He was ready to retire.
But regardless of the story,
it doesn't matter. The audience doesn't like.
I've seen it from both
people
sides.
Don't like change, man. They don't like change.
No.
And so it actually took me a couple of years, but like, when you live your life in public and as I've like gone through this process of like being engaged and getting married, and I tell these stories on the air, and it's a very conservative community. And honestly, the pandemic, I think, really sort of solidified my place in the community as the kind of like host of the show for the community. Because when the pandemic hit, people were really afraid. It didn't matter if you were, it wasn't this red state, blue state thing. It was, we're all in this together. And so at the time, even though I'm kind of a jokester and I like to goof around, like it wasn't a joke at the time. Like we were working very hard to ensure that we were getting good information out to the public about what was happening with toilet paper shortages and all that stuff, because this was life and death. And people, we all thought it was the plague, the Black Plague revisited, and we didn't know what we know now.
Right.
So I think that people really changed their attitude towards me on the show when that happened, because they learned to trust me, because I wasn't just an ideologue. I wasn't just, obviously I opposed the lockdowns, and, now I oppose the mandates. But, I had people come in to the show to explain what was going on from an expert perspective, that were members of the community that people could trust. And I asked real questions to like our county health officials. And honestly, I feel like, I've done a lot of like national campaigns and big stuff that's like, Fox and all that. But I honestly feel like some of my most important work that I've done has just been holding our local public officials accountable on our local radio program to answer difficult questions about things like, I'm hearing that at the city council, you're talking about shutting down businesses. Do you have any evidence that shows that there is a good reason for shutting down businesses that will actually, contribute to public health in this community, right? And when politicians had to answer those kinds of questions in our community, honestly, I feel like, I'm not the entire reason, but I think that I'm part of the reason why many of our local politicians backed off from those ideas of lockdowns, because they knew if they came on the show, they'd have to answer the kind of questions that you wouldn't have to answer if you were the type of person who, and you probably know this type, there are a lot of people in our industry who are, what do they call it, patters to the throne, people who just want to get close to power, people who people who want to have access to the politicians. Yeah. They don't want to rock the boat too much, because, the people who make it in our industry big tend to be the biggest butt kissers, right, and tend to be the biggest people, Glenn excluded, of course. But they tend to be the type of people who don't speak truth to power. Right. Because if you speak truth to power, you won't get access to Joe Biden, and you won't get the interview on ABC or CBS or NBC or whatever. So I feel like some of my best work fighting for liberty has been as a small town radio talk show host, talking to public health officials in my county, holding them accountable and asking them difficult questions that have made them make decisions that truly impacted the lives of our citizens.
So would you say that earning your audience's trust has probably been the most rewarding aspect of having a radio show?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Turning their ideas from this one guy had the nerve to say it to my face. I couldn't believe it. He says, "Why don't you go back to Kansas City where you're from?" Blah, blah, blah. And I was kind of like, oh, God. And having that attitude change, you could almost feel it in the community, where it went from this kind of cold, we didn't get callers in the beginning. Nobody called, nobody texted. And now it's like all day, in the morning, texts and calls and people say, calling you by your nickname and things like that. And so, you could feel it, people's trust and people's attitude change. And now I'm the guy that if they fired me or let me go or whatever, they'd be like, bring back Austin. We're tired of this new guy.
Nice.
Get rid of this new guy. I feel like, that I've, ingratiated myself in this community. And I've been a part of a lot of communities, Libertarian Party, the Republican Party, Freedom Ninja groups and all these things. But this is probably the healthiest and most rewarding community that I've been a part of.
So did I pick up, or was it just an ambiguous example there, where do you have a nickname?
I have a lot of nicknames.
Oh, let's hear them. I want to hear these.
So my given nickname is Augie.
Okay.
And because Austin comes from St. Augustine.
Okay.
And my brother called me Augie as a kid. So people who like, this is just usually my family calls me Augie or Og.
Okay. My
middle name is Wade. Sometimes people call me Wad or like Wade, you know. Okay. But like nicknames that I've had over the years, the Freedom Ninja. But I didn't. I didn't give myself these nicknames. All right, just so you know. So I don't tell people to call me this, okay? But the Freedom Ninja nickname came because I don't know if you know Nick Gillespie from Reason.
Yeah.
So I was at Fox one day, and I was like the judge's like young hotshot producer, and Eric Bowling, who was at Fox at the time, was trying to figure out who was running Judge Napolitano's social media page and blowing up all these likes and all this stuff. So he walks into the dressing room, and there was like this PR lady who knew me at the time, and Eric Bowling was in the dressing room, and he goes, "Does anybody know who runs the judge's Facebook page?" And the PR lady goes, "It's the Ninja." And everybody, like all these famous people, Harris Faulkner, all these Fox people were like turned around in the makeup chairs apparently, and I wasn't there for this. And they go, "Who's the Ninja?" And she goes, "It's the Freedom Ninja, Austin Petersen." This is how it goes. And then I walk in the room later, and Nick Gillespie walks up to me and he goes, "So I hear you're the Freedom Ninja." And I was just like, "What? What is that?" And he told me the story later. But it was just because like I was all about freedom and I did karate. So that's where it came from.
Oh, gotcha.
So that's where it came from.
It. Okay.
Alex Jones gave me a nickname.
Oh no.
Alec got one from Alex Jones.
Was it a nice nickname?
No. So he called me a Justin Bieber lookalike. And again, this was when I was younger, but and a Leif Garrett lookalike, and
Justin Bieber lookalike.
Justin Bieber lookalike.
Leif Garrett over there.
It's exactly what it sounded like. Yeah, he was mad at me because I said 9/11 wasn't an inside job, and yeah, I know.
Was not.
I was not. I said it was not. Right. I said it was not an inside job, and I was like, debunking it. And so he got mad at me and did this whole thing. He was like, "Here's our champion, Liberty champion, Liberty champion." And so people started calling me Leif Bieberson.
Oh, that's kind of cool.
So
right?
Leif, if you ever see somebody call me Leif, that's what that is. So it's like Leif Garrett, Justin Bieber. Leif Bieberson. So Leif Bieberson, Liberty Biebs.
Wow, you do have a lot of nicknames. I'm glad I pursued
the
this.
Ninja, Freedom Ninja, Augie P, AP. Those are all, so a few.
I like it. Okay, so then what would you say as having not been in the radio business until the last few years?
Yeah.
What has been the, I guess, biggest challenge and biggest surprise as now a radio host, would you say? Biggest challenge, maybe the audience.
It's
maybe that's one and the same.
I am not what you would consider a traditional conservative. Okay,
right.
I'm a little bit more from the sex, drugs, and rock and roll part of the Republican Party.
But you're pro-life.
I am, and I'm not religious.
Right.
So I'm from a very Catholic community, and so I won't say I deal with that issue with kid gloves. But I've always been respectful to religious people, and most of my friends I think are religious, and supporters have always been religious people. But I think the pro-life issue is, of course, a big part of that. So, the biggest challenge I think has been to assert myself and not to back down from the views that I hold, which are out of step with the audience. Because honestly, I know going in every day what my audience wants to hear, and if I want to be Glenn Beck one day on radio, then if I want to be that big, and I'm not saying Glenn Beck did this, but I mean, traditionally, you want to tell your audience what they want to hear. I'm just not saying I don't throw out red meat. I do. But there are a lot of times when I know that the audience is not going to agree with what I have to say. I know that and sometimes I get texts when people are kind of like, what are you smoking, kid? Blah, blah, blah. But the biggest challenge for me is staying true to myself, even though I think it's dangerous sometimes. It's dangerous because they do call the boss. They will complain. They do have the dial-in number. I have had complaints from people who do not like what I have to say when it's out of step with traditional conservative views, when it's something like religion or immigration or one of those issues. So that's been the biggest challenge, is to still say what I believe, even though I know, and I'll usually just be like, I know you're not gonna like this, but here it comes. And I think people, appreciate the honesty. You don't get as far with honesty professionally, but
yeah, no, you're absolutely right.
But I'm happy with what I'm doing. Yeah. I'm happy where I'm at.
And you live your life, your job security is basically 3 months at a time.
Yeah.
Right, with the ratings periods. So
to agree, you know what is funny is that we're such a small market. No ratings. No ratings. I still get critiqued. I still have to do the whole sit
air
down air checks. Yeah, I still got to do that. And my bosses, they like me, but I can improve, and everybody can improve.
Gotcha.
It's actually kind of nice. They don't have that kind of same responsibility in a sense. That's cool. It is. You just have to. Yeah, you have to sell advertising. Right, you can't make your advertisers angry. Obviously, I can't be like Culligan is terrible, right? But which is just part of the business. But yeah, so that's just how it is.
All right. So when you have any downtime,
right?
Well, what kind of hobbies? Do you have anything you like to do in your spare time?
3D printing. So so a lot of the libertarian stereotypes I fulfill, massive amount of weaponry and
Bitcoin has to be involved.
Bitcoin, cryptocurrency, investing.
Yeah.
But I'm really into 3D printing. My buddy
sent
me a 3D printer because he wanted me to talk about it and print guns, obviously.
Yeah. Hey, I want you to talk about this and print me some guns.
Print me some guns.
Yeah. What's the biggest thing you've 3D printed?
Oh, the biggest thing? Biggest thing.
A car? You should print a car.
The biggest thing? Probably a gun. But in terms of, I printed this monkey butler thing recently that I'm still working on it, but it's like, so when I got married, you have this wedding ring, I'm like paranoid about losing it. So I printed this monkey butler with a tray, and he holds the ring at night. So you put your ring on the tray of the monkey butler. So I printed that.
How tall is the monkey butler?
It's I don't know, it's probably 12 inches high, so about a foot tall.
Okay.
Right? So a monkey butler.
On the nightstand.
Yeah, it's on the nightstand, little monkey butler, so I could pick up my ring in the morning. But
that's funny.
it is kind of fun. You find all these ways to kind of do these do-it-yourself projects. It's a hobby, but it's kind of also hey, I need a coat rack, or it's hey, I need. It's really useful if you do-it-yourself projects around the home, where you have some plastic item in the home that breaks, or even a car part that's plastic that breaks. You can just copy it.
Right.
Just make a copy of it. Yeah. Right. You don't have to go take it to the shop and spend $600, wait 2 or 3 days to get a part ordered in. Just make it.
Okay, so obviously I've heard of 3D printers and I'm familiar. Glenn's demonstrated on his show before. But where do you go to buy the raw materials, the plastic or whatever?
eBay or not eBay, Amazon.
Is it just?
It's just it's called a filament.
Okay.
And so you basically buy a spindle.
Okay.
Of a filament, and then the filament feeds down into the hot end, and the hot end just melts it, and then melts it into the pattern of the thing that you want to make.
Okay. So the price of the 3D printer aside, how much did it cost you to create the foot-high monkey butler, for example?
Maybe 75 cents.
Whoa!
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. And that's the thing is that and that's why the government freaks out about it when it comes to guns, because it's typically if you want to go, so they have these things called 80% lowers, where it's you can go and get a pre-assembled gun that's the lower of a gun, and then you just have to kind of complete it. Well, those cost $100 online. It costs $1 in terms of parts at home. So you're bringing down the cost of manufacturing firearms by a large. You still have to buy some metal parts, right? You still have to go buy the metal slide for your Glock, and you still have to buy some of the pins and things like that. But as for the lower, and here's the thing, the lower is the part that the government regulates. So if you 3D print guns, you 3D print ghost guns, right? So you can put a serial print number on your gun if you want, but you also don't have to. You can also 3D print a gun without a serial part. So then, that's why Joe Biden and, California Democrats are freaking out, because they're like, oh my God, the ghost guns, right? So it's but that's freedom right there, right?
Right. Yes. Now, what is the price range on a 3D printer these days?
So the one that I have is $220. $220. And I've already printed a lot of things that are worth more than $220.
Oh my goodness.
And it's kind of fun too. So it's if I go to a conference, I printed these little 3D George Washington on a Buddha So like George Washington head, but on a Buddha body, right, with like a big belly, and tchotchkes and stuff. And like if you print that for 20 cents and sell it for $5, that's you're manufacturing, right?
Nice.
So
okay,
yeah.
All right. Okay, so what is, say, the Austin Petersen favorite music genre?
Ooh, so different times in my life, I have different genres. If you talked to me in college, it would have been emo and punk rock. Mm-hmm. Nowadays, it's more hip hop, EDM, trap, and funnily enough, a lot of like New Orleans jazz.
Oh, wow.
Like old school 30s and 40s jazz. Oh, wow. Yeah, so like, Fallout soundtrack kind of stuff, right?
Okay.
But if I'm in the car, I'm listening to chill step. I was in dubstep for a little while, but I've kind of calmed down now. So, chill step is good. I'll turn on soul radio, right? A lot of soul.
Oh, wow.
Soul music, channel 49 on Sirius XM if you listen to Sirius.
Yeah.
And so it's going to be, for me, channels 40 on Sirius XM, it's going to be 49, 50, 51, 52, 53. So you're going to get your soul town, and then you're going to go up there to like, to chill step, trap, and hip hop.
Okay.
Right? Yeah.
They're all conglomerated.
So like hip hop is like the hardcore, like, bad word saying hip hop is like channel 43, 44. And then you go from there. Between 40 to 53 is right where I hang out on the dial.
Okay, I gotcha. So now this next question, this isn't fair to ask on the fly here. This is where it would have come in handy if I hadn't have just grabbed you off the street and said, come in here.
Right.
But if you could keep only 5 possessions, what would they be?
My wedding ring.
Mm-hmm. See, it's not fair, is it?
That's tough. Yeah. 5 things, possessions.
Your 3D printer, because then you could print anything you needed, right?
Yeah, but I don't have a sentimental attachment to it.
I see.
my probably one of the guns my father gave to me as a kid, just because when your father, like probably the first gun my dad gave me was a 22. So that 22 would be number 2, just because there's a real strong sentimental bond there with that. That'd be number 2. I have a sword, World War I ceremonial officer sword that my mother bought for me when I was 11 years old, and at a garage sale of all places. And that was a big deal for me because I was really into knights and Shining or King Arthur stuff when I was a kid. So that sword, the gun my father got me, my wedding ring, those are 3 things.
Your ninja outfit.
Yeah, my ninja uniform. No. It's hard for me to say. I have to think about it a little longer. But probably those 3 objects are kind of like my most treasured items that I've held for most of my life. And then my wedding ring is more recent, of course.
Of course, yeah. So you mentioned your mom buying the sword.
Right.
Would you say, and I'm just assuming, and if I'm wrong, I apologize, correct me, would you say that your mom dying was the biggest turning point in your life? Sure.
Yeah. Nowadays we're kind of coddled as a society. When we were growing up, you delay adulthood these days until you're 27, you can be on your parents' insurance. But when you're 14 and your mom dies, you are a grown up at that time. It's at that point in time you become an adult. And I knew that I had become an adult when a few weeks after she passed away, I'd come home from school. And I was on the farm, and the farmhouse was locked, so I was locked out of the house. And we have this 2nd floor balcony where you can get up there, and there's a door. You can't get up there like by walking up there. You can only get up there if you do like a ladder, and that door was always unlocked. So I went and I got a ladder, and I was climbing up there, and I slipped, and I fell onto the concrete pavement from the 2nd floor, and there was no one around, okay? And there were no cell phones at that time either. So I slipped, fell on the concrete, jumped up to check if I was okay, but I was in pain, man. I was in so much physical pain. My dad wasn't there. My brother was gone to college. My sister was being babysat somewhere. And I was like, nothing was broken, but I was just in a lot of pain. And, the first thing that you shout is, "Mommy," right? When you're that age. And then you realize, okay, well, obviously, Mom, you're not going to see your mom. Mom's not here. Dad's not here. Brother's not here. Sister's not here. No one's here. No one's coming to help. So at that moment, that second, I realized I was alone and that no one was coming to help. No one was going to comfort you. I mean, I could call my dad, but what's he going to say? Nothing broken? Okay, well, I'll see you when I get home, right? But that was the moment when I was like, okay, it's time to grow up. It's time to be a man. There are going to be times, and maybe this is one of those things of masculinity that you have to realize, is that for most of us, when we need help or just need comfort, no one's coming to help. You're going to have to learn to be strong. Yeah. You're going to have to learn how to take care of yourself, because there are going to be times in your life when there's not going to be anybody there to comfort you.
Yeah, and she died of cancer.
Yeah, she did, but she was victimized in part by that. You heard about this guy?
Yeah, this is what I want to ask you.
Yeah, the Robert Courtney guy. He diluted chemotherapy drugs. He did this to thousands of patients in the Kansas City area.
And what was the reasoning behind that? Just
money? Yeah, greed. He was what the left, claims capitalists are all like. Mm-hmm. But the funny thing was that it was the capitalists who found him out, because the insurance companies were the ones who found out he was selling a lot more product than he was buying.
Yeah, okay.
So it was their profit motives. They were like, hey, how is he selling all this stuff and more than he's buying? And so they worked with the doctor, Dr. Hunter at the time, my mother's doctor, to test the chemotherapy drugs, and found that he had been doing it to thousands of people. Right? So.
Wow, I'm so sorry.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so is there an experience in your life where you've been more scared than ever? Was it laying on the pavement there as a kid? Or was there other times in your life maybe where you're like, you look back and you think, man, that's the most frightened I've ever been?
I've had situations where, you live in New York City or you get followed, right? So, in terms of like physical danger, like you feel fear, but yeah, like that feeling of I think loneliness is like one of those things, like you feel that kind of fear. Loneliness is a fear.
Yeah, that's
right.
Good.
You feel that fear.
I've never heard it described like that, but I absolutely agree.
Yeah, you're the fear of being alone. And I remember living in New York City when I first moved there, and was walking through the subway in Times Square, and I'm just dirt poor, right? I can barely afford like a warm enough jacket for this climate, because Missouri winters are nowhere near as harsh as New York City winters. And I just remember kind of like, walking through the cold subway tunnel, being surrounded by people and feeling lonelier than I had ever felt before, because I had no friends, no family, no job yet, right? Like trying to get a job. And like that, I remember that feeling fear because of that loneliness, because you don't know what's going to happen to you, right? You moved to New York, the big city, on a wing and a prayer, like as the farm boy from Peculiar, you think, and at that time I didn't know karate, right? So I, and you don't even realize how vulnerable you are when you can't defend yourself. But I think at that moment, I remember that morning how cold I felt, and how I was like, I can't afford a really warm jacket, and I need to get a warm jacket, and no one can help me. There's nobody around, even in proximity. It's not like I can just like. And I had like a apartment in New Jersey, so the commute to get home was like 3 hours, but somehow I made it. Somehow I pushed through. But I think that feeling of loneliness, and then like you have breakups in your life, where you were married at 21, but like I had breakups, and like there's that feeling of fear of loneliness that you get after something like that, where it's kind of like, what's wrong with me? Why am I not good enough, or things like that. So like, those are psychological feelings that you feel. So like, maybe I think part of the reason why I'm kind of such an extrovert is a desire to not be alone. Right?
Interesting. Yeah.
And it's not that I don't appreciate, being alone now,
right.
now that I have friends and a warm home and a spouse and a dog and all that stuff. But yeah, I remember specifically that one day, that feeling of loneliness and being afraid. Yeah. Afraid of failure.
Okay.
Feeling afraid. I remember when I moved from New York to DC, when I wasn't going to be an actor, but I got a job in DC, and my girlfriend at the time and I were breaking up, and she says, "You're moving to DC because you failed to be an actor in New York, blah, blah, blah." Oh yeah. And that's a fear. You feel the fear of failure.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. No. Yeah. That's a different.
Dude, losing the presidential campaign, and then all of a sudden you go from everybody wants to talk to you and be your friend to everybody hates you. Like, it's amazing how like when you lose, like people like brand you as a loser. Like in our society, like you're only as good as your most recent accomplishment. You are only as good as your most recent accomplishment. So like after that happens and you fail those campaigns, you're only as good as what you do next. So you have to do something. You have to continue to improve yourself, right? And the things that I found that improved me in my life were the healthy relationships that I built. Martial arts was a huge.
I wanted to ask you, how long have you how high did you get? I guess is my question. Belts and stuff.
It's better, I think, if I started briefly to tell you in the beginning how I got into it.
Okay.
So when I was auditioning to be, doing male modeling and stuff. There was a time when I first started my career where I was eating too much New York pizza, and I was fat, and I was, and pasty. And somebody told me that. A girl that I was in a show with was like, she's like, you were hot. When was that? I was like 6 months ago, and I was like, you were hot. You need to lose weight. I was like,
she was looking at a picture of you or something?
Yeah, so from college, from like 6 months before that.
Okay.
She's like, you were hot. You need to lose weight.
Ouch.
And I went to an audition, and I didn't know what the audition was for. It was for underarm deodorant. And so they told me, they're like, and they had me like pretend like this girl who was like 6'6" was my girlfriend. They're like, oh yeah, you're just coming home from work, long day at work, and you're hanging out with your girlfriend and you're grabbing a beer. And I'm like, that's supposed to be my girlfriend.
Oh no.
And I was like, okay, you know what I mean? And I couldn't even get my arm around her because she was so tall. And they called her back, and then they were like, all right, so take off your shirt. And I was like, what? They're like, well, there's a scene where you're in the shower, you just come out and you got your shirt off, and so like take off your shirt. And I was like,
oh no.
So I did, and then they're like, flex your muscles. And I was like, oh God. And then they're like, turn around and flex your muscles. I could hear them laughing.
Oh, bro.
I could hear the producer, the casting director laughing.
Oh.
And I remember like I was playing video games at the time. I was playing some martial arts game. And I remember sitting on my butt and thinking, God, I wish I could do these moves. God, I wish I could do this more. Because I was really good at the martial arts video games. But I was like, you know what? I'm going to do it. And I was like 25 or 6. And so I'm walking home from an audition one day. And I see the karate studio down the street. And I just walked up and I joined.
Nice.
And so I've been doing it consistently. I've had like a few off years since 2006. And the reason why I don't have a black belt is just because I've had to switch schools from moving careers so many times. So I've done everything that you would need to do for a black belt, but other than just like take a test at a school. So I know multiple different styles of karate, and I've done it since 2006, but I don't have an accredited black belt. And, for those of us who are in the martial arts, we know that that's not important.
Yeah.
And I don't do it to like get a black belt.
I gotcha.
I do it for, the health reasons and self-defense reasons and for, community. And, it's a form of spirituality as well, right? That you kind of fulfill meditation and Zen and, the philosophy of self-defense. I wish more libertarians took self-defense classes because I see, and this has been one of my biggest critiques of my fellow libertarians, is that I see a lot of "Don't Tread on Me" shirts, but I sense a lot of attitudes that it's fine if you want to be a pacifist, but we're not all pacifists. And you can talk all day long about defending yourself, but ask yourself, if you are in Kyle Rittenhouse's shoes, do you have the stones to fire the gun? Right. If you don't have an AR-15, can you defend yourself in an unarmed situation? Right. And I've had a couple of those kinds of situations in my life. And I'm glad that I did the martial arts. And it was taking karate that changed my career, because I lost the weight and I started getting cast and I got underwear modeling stuff, right? Because, you look better when you do karate. So.
Yeah. So, okay. You just mentioned there's been a couple of times when you've had to physically defend yourself. Like what happened? The
first time was just for getting followed home.
Okay.
And so like I was on the subway and so when I was broke in New York, I would play guitar in the subway in Times Square for extra change. And some guy saw me and probably thought I was cute and followed me home on the subway. And I could see him like looking at me out of the corner of his eye. So I pretended like I was going to get off at a certain stop just to see if he would follow me. And I got up and I was kind of watching him out of the corner of his eye. He was watching me out of the corner of his eye. And then I sat back down like I was like, oh, wrong stop. And he sat back down, which showed me that he was following me. Mm-hmm. So then it wasn't like, it was like, oh, I did this awesome Mawashigiri and then like Uchi Uki and all this stuff. No, I just palm fist pushed him when I got up. Next time I pushed him into his chair, said, stay right here, don't get off at this station, or else. And that was like the first time that I ever had to actually physically, restrain someone. But the second time was just some crackhead in Kansas City where I was sitting outside with some guy got kicked out of a bar, and he thought that me and my friends were talking about him or whatever because he was like drunk and on drugs.
Right.
And came up and squared up with me. And it was, again, the great thing about like martial arts is it's not like the movies. You don't do all these, like, you learn all these fancy moves in class, but it was just a front kick. I just kicked him.
One and done?
And he ran away.
Nice.
And that's it. You don't need anything fancy.
Yeah.
Like for martial arts or self-defense, the simplest stuff is the best stuff.
Yeah.
And I didn't even have to know jujitsu. You just had to kick a guy in the stomach, and then it's over. And then he ran away.
I love it.
I was like, and my girlfriends who were there at the time were all like, "My hero!"
Yay.
And then when I ran for office, I was like, "Can you go tell people that I did that?"
I could have won you some more
The
votes.
Missouri loves Josh Hawley. So.
Okay, I picked up some guitar playing in there.
Yeah.
How long have you been doing that?
Yeah, so I mean, I haven't done it since then as much, but I played guitar for a number of years. That was like my instrument. I played guitar in Times Square, and surprisingly, if you stand in Times Square long enough with a guitar and sing, if you're not bad,
You don't have to wear the knockoff Elmo suit.
Correct.
To make money in Times Square.
Yeah. And like what was weird about that too is that like because it's such a hub, you run into people that you know sometimes, right? Because I ran into my brother at one point in time, you know what I mean? He was like from Boston, he just happened to be there.
That's
and there
funny.
he was, a friend from high school who happened to be in New York, but it's because everybody goes to Times Square.
Sure, yeah. If you could go back in history, who's someone you would like to meet? See, I didn't give you time to prepare for these.
I never
answers.
got to meet Stephen Ambrose. I would have liked to have made Stephen Ambrose a historian. His books really inspired me, got a passion for history.
That's a good
Band
one.
of Brothers.
Yeah.
Right? I would have
good.
liked to talk to him. There's a lot of the founding fathers that I obviously identify with.
Yeah,
And
who's your favorite? If you had to pick one to sit at a bar with.
who was the one that died after Governor Morris? He was like sleeping with a married woman and he like broke his leg and it like went gangrenous and he died.
How do I not know this? Okay, that's funny.
Yes. It's also true.
Yeah.
They don't teach you that in school though.
Okay, but so that's who you want to hang out at a bar with?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
I want to, the Patrick Henrys,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
bad boys of the founding fathers.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
That would be a good collection. The bad boys of the founding fathers.
The bad boys of liberty.
There it is.
Yeah.
There it is. Okay. What's currently in your Amazon cart?
Oh, yeah, you asked me this. So nothing because I buy everything that I get there, but I do have a list.
Okay.
And, you heard me talking about like martial arts stuff. So there's like some karate books in there and stuff like that. I like to read the books from like the masters and compare them to my own training. But and then like 3D printing accessories and things like that.
Wait, accessories like you racing stripes on
Upgrade.
your...
Well, no, because so upgrades. Right, so like rather than like plastic parts that are not as durable, so arid, extra dry, antiperspirant,
Extra dry.
extra dry, not extra dry, extra dry, because I sweat. I use hair conditioner. This is like called biofuel.
Okay.
It's like it's really good. If you're a guy, it smells like sandalwood. It's really good. Even though you and me, we both kind of have the hair thing happening up there.
We do.
But for our beards, it's really good.
Okay.
Really good.
Yeah.
Shotokan Karate Bible.
So wait a minute. Like if there's a martial arts book, right? And you said you read the books by the masters and stuff.
Yes.
And this sounds like I'm being flippant, and I promise you I'm not. Like, do they just describe moves to do, or like I feel like I would need pictures or videos?
Yes
you know
and
what I mean?
no. Yes and no. Yeah, there are like just straight up instructional books, but like there's a spiritual aspect to to Japanese karate, and like it's kind of like the art of war. So karate is for defense only. Karate begins and ends with respect. So respectfulness, mindfulness, spirituality. There's a dojo kun that most Shotokan practitioners will usually repeat at the end of every class, which is seek perfection of character, be faithful, endeavor, respect others, and refrain from violent behavior. So typically you'll hear like explanations for how to get out of fights and how to not get in fights. Most of what you learn in martial arts is how to avoid a situation where you'll ever have to be in a fight. Right? So that's like lesson number one. And typically like you're considered not a good martial artist if you get into a fight.
Oh, wow.
Because your whole thing is karate is for defense only. So, you should be so good at your arts that no one will either ever mess with you because they're so intimidated, or that you're smart enough not to put yourself in a situation where you would, get in trouble. A bunch of, I like World War II propaganda posters from like both sides. I'll usually frame those. A Trigicon, ACOG scope for like AR-15s, pillows, hazelnut coffee from Dunkin'
Wait,
Donuts.
how do you buy a pillow on Amazon without trying it out? Like, I'm the guy at Walmart standing in the aisle with my head on the shelf.
It got 5 stars, so I just
you just trusted it.
Yeah.
Hold on, let's go back to the I don't know, it was a creed or what have you called it, the martial arts code there.
Yeah.
This is just a friendly suggestion. You can take it under advisement. Maybe that should be your thing at the end of every show, every morning on your radio show, or maybe at the end of every Friday show, you finish with that. What do you think of that? That's your sign off.
Yeah, conservatives think I'm weird enough already.
Okay.
So as a libertarian on Conservative Talk Radio, I try not to spook the horses too much.
There you go. That's a good way to put it. All right.
So, when they hear you do karate, they're kind of like, ha, I do pajamas and all that kind of stuff. But, if they actually saw what a karate classes look for, they'd be like, the first part would be like, what is going on? Because there's a lot of this traditional bowing and kind of like, repetition of like, these things. And then it gets exciting, and then it gets boring again. And
I did karate classes for like 5 minutes.
did you do Japanese karate?
I don't remember what it was. I just remember,
Was it Shotokan?
Well, it was strip mall karate.
It was McDojo stuff?
I don't know, because what it was, I was about 10 years old.
Yeah.
Karate Kid comes out.
Yeah.
You get a coupon at the theater. You go and do the 6 free lessons or whatever.
Yeah.
And you show how uncoordinated you are. And then you call it a career. So I just don't remember anything about what style it was. I just know that I was not good at remembering all the moves and stuff.
Yeah, it takes years to master it. And it was for me, it was all about health.
Yeah.
It started out as like a way to lose weight, to be nimble. And honestly, like it did change the path of my career, because when I was auditioning, the fact that I knew how to fight, the fact that I could do these moves,
cool,
gave me the ability to do, to get cast in roles that I would not have done.
Where could we see you doing stuff?
So like, if you go to, if you type in, probably the funniest thing, if you want to laugh, is you type The Exiles in YouTube. The Exiles, and there's like, that'll bring up a lot of results. The company was Cinemythic.
Okay.
So like cinema, and then mythic, Cinemythic. And if you type in The Exiles, Cinemythic, you'll see a trailer for an independent film that I was in, where I was like wearing chainmail and had a long wig of like, and I was doing sword fighting and martial arts in this indie film when I was in New York. So
can I type in your name? Was that going to help me?
I don't know if that'll pull it up, but it was called The Exiles. And if you type in Cinemythic Productions, you'll find like a 6-minute cinematic trailer, and then you'll see flashes, see a bunch of dudes in wigs, and then one of those guys who is like sword fighting in the river.
That's you.
Doing combat is me.
Oh, I got to find this.
Yeah, it's there. It's on YouTube, but it may be a little buried down. Like Converse shoes commercials.
If you think about it, you send it to me. I'll be sure to tweet this out. And
for sure.
People can see
for
this.
For sure. So like that, like student films, short films, underwear modeling. You do anything when you first get in that career.
Yeah.
So I did a little bit of everything. Conan OBrien skateboard segment, things like that. And, my career was just really getting interesting because I was, doing more fighting scenes and stuff like that. I was getting cast in roles where, you get knocked out by the lead and all that stuff. And then Ron Paul came along and, all of a sudden my career trajectory changed. Yeah. So, libertarianism and philosophy, and the arts and creativity have merged into my career to where, here I am now. I feel very whole, right, as a person now, especially because of my really healthy relationship with my wife, who I love and adore. I have a good relationship with the audience that I talk to on my radio show. I have a really good, healthy relationship with my family and my friends. So, I'm in a really good spot right now.
That's cool.
And career-wise, like, I don't really feel the need to, like, be the biggest star in the world. I like my community and being a part of my community. I love my working at KWOS. I love my co-host. I love, coming home to my wife at noon in this small town and just, dwelling in some relative sense of obscurity, right?
Yeah.
In some sense.
Yeah.
Like big enough to be invited to Dallas to be on the Blaze, small enough that you are not going to get recognized anywhere you go.
Right.
Although somebody texted me the other day and said that they saw a Petersen for President bumper sticker in Northeast Ohio.
Oh, wow.
So I was kind of like, oh, that is old school.
So would you ever consider running for president again, do you think?
I won't say no, but the reason why I think it's highly unlikely is because 2016 was just such an anomaly of a year that I felt like the right person at the right time. I felt like in 2016, I felt called that it was because of the way Trump was, because of the way Hillary was, because Rand Paul, who I was supporting, was being crushed and had been kind of shunted aside.
Yeah.
That there was a desire for the American people to hear from a reasonable, constitutional, limited government person who was not, kind of wild and crazy and saying all kinds of, crazy stuff. So I felt like that was what was needed. But you know what? I don't think the American people want people like me right now. I don't feel like the American people, I think people right now more than ever want safety more than they want liberty. And that is a shame. But you know what? I recognize it. Amongst Republicans, amongst conservatives, limited government has never been more out of fashion amongst Republicans. It used to be that limited government was out of fashion, but they talked about limited government. But now it is openly an authoritarian movement that is in charge of the Republican Party at this point. It is a openly and nakedly, blatantly authoritarian movement. And there's no room for somebody like me who says, I don't want you to pay income taxes.
Thank you.
Yeah, I don't want you to be forced to take a vaccine.
Wow.
But that's not what the majority of Americans want right now. So I don't feel called because I really don't think the American people want it. But just because they might need it, but that's not what they want.
Right. Well, you ran when you were 35 at the minimum age. So there are going to be many, many, many more cycles in your lifetime. So who knows? Maybe the time will be right once again.
Maybe, but there's better people than me. People who have served the country.
You're like, it's not happening. Leave me alone. I want to live on a farm.
No, yeah, for sure. But there are people who've sacrificed for this country more than I have. I didn't serve in the military. And I do think it's good to have a president who has served, even if Biden didn't and Trump didn't. That doesn't mean that you can't be a great president. I think you can absolutely be a great president. But I felt in 2016 like we had reached the bottom of the barrel. And I was like, oh, well, then I'm qualified. So I think that there are better candidates.
All right. All right. Anything you're working on right now that we need to be aware of coming down the pike?
Babies? No. No. Just,
you want me to edit that out?
Yeah, no, it's fine. No, it's no. I mean, I'm trying to be a good servant to my community.
Yeah.
Now, you know what I'm really looking for, and I'm not desperate per se, but I'm just looking for that opportunity to spread liberty in a really productive and healthy way. The toxicity of our politics now, I think, is such a point where you can't, if you get involved with the political process at this point, you cannot help but be tainted by it. Yeah. You cannot help but be destroyed in some way by it. To have something that is good and pure, you cannot help but you cannot be successful in politics now without playing the game to such an extent as to where you must compromise your principles and who you are. And I just really enjoy, I have such a, like I said, mentally healthy, physically healthy. I want to focus on, building a healthy family right now, and getting in politics would not be good for them.
Well said. Well said.
Yeah.
Well, where can people find you on social media?
So the best way to listen to the KWOS morning show is the Facebook live stream when they allow me to live stream. Because like I said, I've got a 30-day ban now. So, I'll have to figure out some way to broadcast the KWOS morning show on Facebook, but like the page anyway. But if you want to find me on Social Liberty, it's just AP for Liberty. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram.
AP, the number 4.
AP, the number 4. Liberty. AP for Liberty. Type it in. Okay. I'm on whatever network it is.
All right.
Except TikTok.
Except TikTok. All right. Very good. Austin Petersen, thanks for making time for At the Mic. I appreciate it, man.
Thanks, Keith.
I want to thank Austin Petersen for taking the time to tell us about his life. He's done so much, It's going to be interesting to see where things go for him from here on out. If you enjoy the conversations that you hear on At the Mic, I hope you'll tell folks about it. Just go ahead and send them the convenient link, if you wouldn't mind, atthemicshow.com. Tell them it's a matter of life and death. They must listen. They absolutely have to. If you need some At the Mic Show merchandise, we've got that as well. Just head to atthemicshop.com. Next week, we're going to sit down with the inaugural sponsor of this podcast, APR Coffee founder Dave Matthews. There's so much more to Dave than coffee. We're going to discuss his life story next time. In the meantime, if you're able to rate and review this podcast, we'd appreciate it so much. But most importantly, please go be free. And thank you for listening.
This has been At the Mic with Keith, an independent podcast production. Head to atthemicshow.com for archived episodes, sponsor information, and ways to connect.
Oh, hey there. You're still around? Cool. Thanks for making it to the very end of this podcast today. I want to reward you if you're quick enough to respond. This is kind of like an extra scene you might have after the credits roll on a Marvel movie. The first 3 people who send a direct message to the At the Mic Show Twitter account with their name, address, and one item they'd like to own from atthemicshop.com, from that website, you're going to receive it free of charge. Give it a shot. You may be one of the first to reach out, so what are you waiting for? Get on that. Send that direct message right now to @themicshow on Twitter with your mailing address, the product you'd like, from atthemicshop.com. And good luck.